on having the show. Nothing is more important than the local programs that engage our communities.
She's a proud HBCU grad. It's time for Alicia Reece Soulfood, food for the soul, on Cincinnati's 24-hour urban gospel connection, Inspiration 1050 AM and 103.1 FM WGRI.
Hey, everybody. It's Friday. It's that time. And if you're listening to the rebroadcast, it's Saturday for you guys. Alicia Reece Soulfood, food for the soul. We've got a very, very special show today, an exclusive with Governor Mike DeWine. I need you guys to get everybody you know to the radio for those who are listening to us on 103.1 FM. Or if you listen to us on 1050 AM, get to the radios, call all your friends, tell them turn it on. An exclusive is coming. Tell them Alicia Reece is on with Governor Mike DeWine, and we're bringing all kind of hot sauce. We have a chance to have an exclusive with Governor DeWine, and so I want everybody to have time to tune in. But first, let me go on record. I want to thank God. Boy, well, they say for every mountain, you know what I'm saying? For every trial, for every tribulation, he brings us through. So I want to thank God. Many of you know I'm running for county commissioner, and it is a two-step process. The first process was to win the primary, and that's what we just had, the primary. Then after that, we've got the general election in November. So it's not over. So if he was, oh man, it's over. No, we just got to get a second wind. So I want to, first of all, thank everyone that helped us in this primary. From the first day in November of 2019, after praying, God gave me the vision that I should run for county commissioner. I didn't know what was getting ready to happen. And I didn't know if anybody would show up. Well, we put it out that we're running. We were at the Board of Elections, and we had 100 people come and stand with us for county commissioner. And one of those people was Jean Seniors, and those who listen to Inspiration station that we're on know that Jean Seniors was a big fan of WGRI. She called me after every show. She's known me before I was born, one of my mother's last best friends that were living. She came from the West End like my mother. And my dad told me she was one of the few people. My mother didn't let anybody touch me when I was born, barely wanted him to hold me. And the only other person she would let hold me was Jean Seniors. And she was more like Auntie Jean. And a big proud member of Beulah Baptist. And when she held me, my dad said, she told my mother, this girl, I might call my mother Bobby, this girl gonna be somebody. And she's been with me throughout my life. And so we lost her. She didn't get to see the primary election. She started with us in the primary, didn't get to see it out, dedicating this election to her. I'm also dedicating it to Mayor Susan Farley of Woodlawn, big supporter of mine, big mentor. All of our families are tight. Her funeral is Saturday. And so it's just a lot to hear that she passed. She didn't get to see this primary. So we have a lot to fight for, and I'm going to continue to fight for those who were with me all the way to the end, So I want to thank all of it. I want to thank my Reece volunteers, lots of volunteers who you didn't have to do it, and you volunteered in our campaign, and it got tough, and you stuck with it. Many had never worked in campaigns ever. Bernadette Watson, who took over 289 calls, you guys called her. She took the calls to make sure that you had your ballots, had made sure. I mean, we never did anything like this. So this election was special. It is special. We had to overcome a lot. I want to thank my family who's been with me every step of the way. Of course, my dad, my sister, my brother, particularly my father, Dr. Stephen Reece, one of the best strategists in the game, and also one of the best fathers, which means more to me than anyone could ever ask for. My sister, who's been there hearing my calls and and being there and making sure people have request forms and those kind of things. So I just want to just say that we had so many people that got involved. The mayors and former mayors that stood up when people were telling them, don't stand with me. Mayor John Cranley stood up when a lot of people were telling him, don't go with me. And he stood up and endorsed me. And then all the former mayors, Mayor Mark Mallory and Mayor David, former mayor and council member David Mann, who's also a former congressman that I worked for, Mayor Charlie Lucan. You had all the former mayors that had never been done before, city of Cincinnati, that stood with me. Councilwoman Linda Childs Jeter in Lincoln Heights. And of course, the mayor of Lincoln Heights, I thank her so much. Mayor of Woodlawn, thank you so much. So many people that stood with us. Chase, who's on here. Chase, thank you so much. Chase, you got the right name, because we were chasing these ballots, chasing these voters. And for those who prayed for me and all the churches that had the drive-throughs, thank you so much in that effort, being led by Quentin Monroe, Pastor Quentin Monroe, Minister Bumani Taimba, who said, we'll step up and take this. And then Pastor Garrett, who did the test case. We did it at his church first. It showed that we could drive through and get these applications. We had everything that we had to deal with. And I'll tell you that, you know, you can't have a testimony without a test. When I was younger, he said, man, a testimony, they sing the song. He said, well, I'm going to have a test. My mom said, don't ever ask that question. I mean, when I'm going to have a testimony, she said, don't you want to ask that question? And I know why. Because whenever you have a testimony, there's a test. And I can't even tell you my whole testimony. If I told you, you wouldn't believe it. But I want to tell you that God has moved things. And sometimes I don't understand it. I haven't understood it. And he just moves things. You know, people say, oh, Alicia, she's a career politician. And I was kind of like, well, wait a minute. I'm in communications. I do other things. I got this. I did that. But, sometimes you got to go with what God's assignment is. If it's his assignment for me to be an elected official, I got to become an elected official. I got to move with whatever God's assignment is for me. And we all have individual assignments. And so this was an assignment. We went in my first election ever, not having an endorsement by the Democratic Party. I've never not been endorsed. I was not endorsed. I was not on the sample ballot. I've never not been on the sample ballot. I've never not been endorsed. I've always been outspent, but never not endorsed. So we had to go in, and this is the only election where we did not be endorsed by a major party. And we were able to come out in this, and I'm going to speak it because they said speak it. We're going to win this. There's still some votes out there. We're ahead over 1,800 votes. So we're moving on. We're moving in faith. We're moving on. We're getting ready for November. So those who supported us, we thank you so much. Nija, thank you for checking in. Nija, small business owner, said, hey, I'm with you all the way. And she's been with me and doing it all the way. I thank you so much for that. But here's the deal. We got to have faith. And once you've done the work, you got to have faith. And we did the work. A pandemic? Come on. Stopping an election 12 hours before the election? We have an in shelter. You got to vote by mail now. We've never done that. And then we were able to come up. God blessed me with some ideas and some extra energy to get out here and help people learn a new process. And people want to know our blueprint. And the blueprint is God. People ask me, who you got on your team that we can invite to the meeting? I said, well, God's on my team. And our team has been put together strategically with people that God sent into our lives. So I want to thank the Reece team. We come a long way. People said we couldn't do it. We weren't going to do it, but we stayed focused and we stayed positive and we stayed moving, and we had a lot of mountains. And if you guys really knew the story, you wouldn't believe the things that we had to endure. We got thrown out of meetings, said you can't come in our house and talk about your candidacy, but we'll let the other candidates do it. All of these things, but we're not thriving on the negative. And even send someone else in the race to be a distraction. And it was hard because that person was coming at me and we had to take it. And if the person probably wasn't in the race, it would even be a larger margin. But guess what? It's what God wants. And so we're going to be victorious. We are victorious. And what I'm asking you all to do, we're moving to the next phase, because in order to complete the assignment, we've got to win in November. So we're moving to November. And so I'm asking you, if you weren't on the team but want to get on the team, come on. If you were sitting back and you didn't quite know, come on. If you now say you're ready to go, come on. Join our team, and you can do that by calling 513-861-6033. 861-6033. We're moving toward November. Now, let me get some water here. I'm getting choked up about this, boy, what God does. I was trying to hold myself, but when God gets moving on you, sometimes you just can't stop. I'm humbly grateful. I'm humbly grateful. But I'm confident in what God's going to do and has already done. I'm humbly grateful, but I'm confident. And I'm confidently faithful. There it is. I'm humbly grateful, but I'm confidently faithful. I got to give y'all a word. We on the inspiration station. So put that down. I'm humbly grateful, but I'm confidently faithful. But I need your help. So call 861-6033. Thank you all for all the congratulations. We did it and all of that. Thank you, Darlene Stewart. We had the watch party there, and you've been supportive of me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you to your family, and I really appreciate you. My family stepped up and stepped out. My extended family stepped up and stepped out. My Withrow family, Carol Mitchell Lawrence, who was over our centennial. Thank you. You stepped up and got all of the folks, Nikki and everybody on board. Withrow was in the house. Reverend KZ Smith and Reverend Damon Lynch that hosted this drive-through and believed in it, and Pastor Garrett, and then all the pastors that participated. Thank you so much. You stepped up. We're on our way to November. So when people say, what is she doing? You tell her she's humbly grateful for what God has done, and she's confidently faithful. And we're moving to November. So call 861-6033. We're moving to November. Ain't no stopping us now. I'm not going to play the song, so Facebook try to take me off. For those who are listening to us on Facebook, now I need everybody to get to the radio. Everybody to get to Facebook Live. If you are a small business owner, if you're concerned about what are we going to do about education, if you're concerned about what's happening with COVID-19, if you're concerned about unemployment, the hotline, if you want to know what's going on with the unemployment, if you want to know about cosmetologists and barbers, when will the beauty and barbershops be open? I want them to be safe too, but I'm telling you, I need them to get open in some kind of way. We hurting out here. We realize how important, how essential the barbershop and the beauty shop are to our lives. I've seen some of y'all on Facebook, including myself. We need some help out here. So we're going to talk to Governor DeWine. And after we won, I got the call from Governor DeWine. He said, hey, are we on for the interview? So we sat down with the governor yesterday, and we had an interview, and I tried to ask all the questions that I had heard you guys asking. But guess what? One day after, right after the primary, our first show, we got the Governor Mike DeWine on Alicia Reece Soulfood. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. I want to thank y'all. Y'all just don't know. I want to thank you so much. We come back. We've got Governor Mike DeWine, an exclusive one-on-one with Alicia Reece with all kind of hot sauce. When we come right back after this. The words that describe my father is from the bottom up, because nobody gave him anything. He's our GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Whenever I need somebody to tell me the truth, he's the person that I go to.
I figured out a long time ago, the greatest profession of all time is ownership.
I don't think your dad's afraid of anybody.
He was always there to support us.
Probably the closest thing I can think of being self-made.
From the bottom up, the Dr. Stephen Reece Sr. story, produced and directed by Alicia Reece. Available on YouTube.
Okay, we're back. Alicia Reece Soulfood. Now, yesterday I had a chance to have a one-on-one with Governor Mike DeWine. I mean, everybody's trying to get to him. I mean, nationally, they're trying to get to him. You tune in every day at 2:00, what they say, wine with DeWine. Well, we brought some hot sauce with Governor DeWine. Let's check out this interview with Governor DeWine and Alicia Reece.
And we're on Alicia Reece Soulfood, Food for the Soul. And, you know, we've had Governor DeWine on our show before. We appreciate him being on. Last time he was on, we was at the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus conference. And now he's back on. And I want to thank him for taking time out to be with us and talk to our viewers and listeners at a critical time where not only all of Ohioans are paying attention, but the whole country is paying attention because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I called him up and said, hey, I'd like to have you back on the show so that we can talk to our listeners about some of the issues that they've been bringing up to me. So thank you for being on the show again, Governor. Welcome back.
Alicia, thank you very much. You know, the title of your show, makes me hungry. You know, my wife's a good cook, so I want to know if you're going to share any recipes.
I know I need to have the First Lady
soul
on.
Food,
First Lady,
soul food for the soul, you know.
yes, we should do that. We should have the First Lady come on the show. We talk about some good recipes. She's got a good recipe.
Well, no, I'm talking about recipes from you.
Oh yeah, I have some recipes.
I'm talking about recipes from you.
Yes, I have some. I've got a great smothered pork chop, so we're gonna have to do that. Well, Governor,
sounds pretty good. That sounds good to me. That sounds very good to me.
Well, Governor, I want to get right into it because I know you don't have a lot of time. I wanted to talk about.
Sure.
We want to make sure that we flatten the curve. And we're looking at you every day at 2:00. And one of the things that people have been asking me, and they've been talking about it all over the country, African Americans are disproportionately, dying and being impacted by COVID-19. And I wanted you to talk about one of the questions I was asked is the task force, specifically among African Americans, to try to reduce that rate if that is the group that is being targeted the fastest and the hardest right now.
Well, that's absolutely right. We put this task force together, and they're working on this. And it's, the numbers, as you know, are just shocking. I looked at Ohio numbers, and they're not complete. So you can't, sometimes no race is marked down. But even though we had 15 or 20% that was not attributable to any race, you had still 21% were African American. So that means that the true African American rate is much higher even than that, 25, 26%. I think our state population is 13%, something like that, African American. So, these numbers are just out, horrible. And, I'm not really sure why, but we've asked our, group to take a look at this. And, I would be interested, frankly, in your ideas about what we could be doing, and interested in the ideas of any of your listeners, because it's just, these numbers are just horrible.
Well, Governor, one of the things that we have seen with this is there's been health disparities, and a lot of the disparities and the data were making sure that the resources, and one of the things you talked about was that we hadn't spent enough money on in the health area, that you learned from this, that we hadn't really put the money that we needed into that. And you were saying, I saw one of your tweets saying that's one of the things that you wanted to work on. And I would say that as the data is coming in, we've got to match that with resources to eliminate these disparities among African Americans in a health way, because I guess those are the reasons that African Americans are more targeted with the COVID-19.
Well, look, Alicia, you and I both know, and you and I have talked about it, but you look at other numbers. You look at, for example, the death rate in childbirth is much higher among African Americans, if women. And if you look at the infant mortality rate, it's, shockingly higher. And so, access to healthcare is absolutely key. And so I suppose it should not really surprise us when we see the numbers, as I said, for maternal death rate, which just should not occur, hardly ever should it be occurring. And we see the numbers among African American women in Ohio much higher, and the infant mortality rate much higher. So I suppose it shouldn't shock us, that the COVID-19, death rate is so much higher than one would think it would be.
Now, Governor, you had to make a hard decision. You shut down a lot of businesses. You shut down Ohio, quite frankly, and we had to go into in shelter. And I've got a lot of calls dealing with the economics component because while there is a health disparity, as it relates to COVID or cancer or diabetes, etc., there also is an economic disparity. And so a lot of the questions that we had dealt with unemployment. People were furloughed. People had to file unemployment. We're getting a lot of folks that said, or one of our listeners said it took over a month and they still haven't gotten their unemployment. What's going on with that? People are saying, how can we get a person on the phone versus just talking to the computer?
We've now had over 1 million people apply for unemployment in the state. When we started, we had 42 people answering the phones before this coronavirus, and that was sufficient. We now have, I think, Alicia, 1,400 people answering the phones, and it's still not sufficient. No one wants to hear the excuses, so I'm not going to give the excuses, but we've got a lot more people working. As I said, over 1,300 more people working, answering those phones. We had a kind of an antiquated, system that was put forward and that we inherited, but never designed to take on this kind of onslaught. But I also want to talk about, you make a very good point. When you have an economic downturn, generally, people of color take a harder hit. And so, this is certainly of a concern. We're trying now to come back. We're trying to open Ohio back up. But even when we say, these businesses can open, people still, it's not going to work unless people have confidence to go back in. And so we've come up with some standards to try to protect workers, to try to protect customers. We put a group together of businessmen and women. We had African Americans on there. We had people all over the state of Ohio, big business, small business, middle-sized business, and they came back with some, I think, very, very good recommendations in regard to people, what the requirements would be when businesses go back in. And one of the things we've talked about, it's a little controversial, I don't think it should be, that is people wearing facial covering. And, that is something to go along with the distancing that really helps protect everybody. And I think it will engender more confidence because when you start businesses back up, you can start them back up and you can flag out and say, hey, we're open for business. But if people aren't confident, if they're scared to go in, that doesn't help. So we're doing a lot of things at once and trying to do a lot of things at once and opening businesses back up. Retail is going to be open on May 12th, but we got to make sure that people feel safe when they go in there.
Yes, and before we get to the opening of the business, do you think, or have you given an internal deadline for the unemployment? Because that's we want people to also spend money in the economy, and if we open back up, I'll be honest with you, Governor, because I know you always like to know what's happening on the ground. A lot of times we're open back up now. It's about to be the first of the month. So now the rent collector is opening back up. The mortgage bank wants to be paid the mortgage now that we open back up. Yep. It opens back up the creditors. But if you don't have the unemployment check or you don't have the money, it's going to really kind of be disastrous for a lot of people. Because when you open back up, the governor said open back up, so it's time to pay these bills.
No, boy, that's absolutely right. And the other problem, we're getting people through, we're getting them signed up, we're getting them approved, and then it's getting these checks out. Now, the only good news I can say about that is, when you get that check, that goes back. In other words, if it's been a couple weeks and you didn't get a check, you're gonna get paid for every one of those days, going back to the time that you first were eligible. Even though you couldn't get through, even though you're hung up on the phone, whatever that date was that you're eligible, when you get that check should be covered back to that date. So people should not lose money. But I understand if they don't have, if they're late getting the money, and you got bill collectors and people want to, want you to pay your bills, and if you don't have that money coming in, I fully understand it. It's a problem. So we're really, really pushing, trying to get that money out to people, and I feel sorry about it, and I apologize for it.
Thank you, Governor. And when you give your briefing too, maybe that might be something your group could look into as you're opening up, like you said, you're phasing it in, to also have people to kind of be understanding, because we are, we might be backlogged with these checks, so please be understanding with the folks. Now let's talk about the small businesses. You say you're going to phase it in, and I know construction is able to go back beginning of May, and then you said May 12th, the retail will be able to be open. And as you know, in small business, there's three categories. I always say there's the bigger small business, the mid-size, and then there's the micro. A lot of African-American businesses fall into the micro area. And when even Washington talks about, you can get the stimulus money or the CARES Act, it tends to be very hard and confusing for people who are independent contractors or who have a micro business. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that? I know I have some ideas. I was thinking those type of businesses need grants, and I'll put this out there for your experts to take in. I was just thinking, if they need grants, one of the things that maybe it could run through an organization, maybe like the community action agencies that already have a micro enterprise, or the urban league that we already have relationships with, and maybe there's grant money available from $10,000 to 50,000 or something to help the micro.
No, I think that's
a grant. But talk about a little bit about your small business plan.
Well, Alicia, I think that's absolutely right, and that's something that we should be looking at. Certainly, communities can look at, but we'll look at the state level and see what we can do. Because sometimes it doesn't take a lot of money, a little bit of money, but somebody can get rolling again. I know one small group of small business people have really been hit, and that's people who cut hair, salons, barbers, and so we put a group together to try to talk about that. But I know in the minority community and well, it's every community, we've got small entrepreneurs, and if they're not cutting hair, they're not making money. I mean, nothing's coming in the door unless they're doing that. So it's a particularly concerning, because people are working so close together. Obviously, because somebody's hair, you're very, very, you're not within, you're within 6 feet. You're not separated, but trying to figure out, how to do that. And so we're working on that, and within the next few days, we're going to have an announcement about that. So I know that we've got a lot of calls, a lot of people who cut hair and say, hey, I gotta get back in, and I fully understand that. So that's one group of small businessmen and women who really depend on what they do. If they don't cut the hair, they don't get any money, and the rent still continues, or costs still continue, utilities.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you brought them up, because that is the number one group that I've been getting a lot of questions. When I was in the legislature, I even had a town hall meeting with cosmetologists and barbers, and so I get a lot of calls from them. Like you said, when can they get back open? Independent contractors, they're not eligible under a lot of these programs they can't get unemployment because they're not W-2s, they're 1099s. A lot of them own storefront businesses, and the rent is due.
Yeah.
So I would hope with the package, I would love to see. I saw the mayor of Atlanta. She has a fund that she put together for beauty and barbers. And I don't know all the particulars, but the group that you're working with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it would be great to have something for them that can help them not only open back up and go back to work, but if there are restrictions that they might have to make improvements to their property in order to do the work, like you said, to be able to be 6 feet away or be able to put up any partitions. Also, if there was a way that maybe there's some funding that could help them in a grant type of way to help them with rent relief for those who had to pay rent. Because, of course, the owner of the buildings are going to say, hey, you're open, and by the way, you owe me for that month that you had to close, but you got to give me the money if you want to get back. So there's, something where we open them up, but also we also connect them economically to the tools that you put together at the state that they can easily access, maybe through the state board. But I'm anxious for them to get open too. In a safe way, of course.
Well, as you can see, if you can see from my hair on TV, if you see it, I'm ready as well. I might mention, you mentioned 10 people who file a 1099s. That is a federal program. They are now eligible, and we're taking applications for that. So that's again something that the people who file that should be going online and applying for that, and that will be some money coming to them. That's that's through the federal government. One of the bills that Congress did in fact pass.
Absolutely. So I agree with that, and I appreciate that. We look forward to hearing what you're going to do in terms of opening those businesses.
Okay, Governor DeWine, we got more coming up with Governor DeWine. And, that was one of the big questions I had from the beauty and barber industry, although they're not the only industry. You're right, Randall Wyatt. And that's why he talked earlier about some of the other businesses. He has a council that's dealing with small businesses. And one of the things I talked about was grants that could be for micro businesses that would maybe flow through, say, a micro business enterprise at the Community Action Agency or the Urban League. They always got to flow through somewhere rather than just the banks. That would apply to all small and micro businesses. So great question, Randall Wyatt. But you hear it, barber and beauty shops. Stay tuned. He said in a couple days. Stay tuned. Hold on. We'll be right back with more from Governor DeWine. We're talking education. We talk the prisons. We talk all of that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Eastern Personnel Services Incorporated, located at 619 Central Avenue, is looking for you. Their clients are looking for awesome workers with great work ethic, good work history, and outstanding skills. Are you a professional in healthcare, have clerical or administrative skills, hospitality, customer care, industrial, general labor? Are you in construction or a driver? If so, call their job line at 513-230-5034. That's 513-230-5034. Eastern Personnel Services Incorporated is an equal opportunity employer.
And we're back. Alicia Reece Soulfood, those who are just tuning in. Again, thank you all that came out and voted in the primary. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. But we've got an exclusive with Governor DeWine. I sat down with him yesterday, one-on-one by phone, and we had an exclusive. So let's hear some more with this interview with Governor Mike DeWine.
One of the things I also thought about, you may already have it because it's a lot going on, but having some type of webinars that people can go to through the state to help walk them through, because, if you're a, barber beautician, you've never experienced this before. You've never had to access the state except to get your state license. And so maybe some webinars to help them connect with resources easier would be helpful. And then one other thing, what about these licenses? If you have a barber's license or real estate license or what have you, that is whatever, the state has numerous licenses to do business. Is there any thought about putting a moratorium on the renewal fees for small businesses, since they had to close? Maybe it's a moratorium for the year and you don't have to pay this year, but you may,
Well, yeah, I mean, we haven't done that, but what something that would make sense, and this has not been done yet, but something that would make sense is if you can't use your license for a certain period of time, you ought to get that credit. You ought to get that credit for those months that you paid for it, but you didn't get a chance to use it. We got to figure some way to do that.
That's good. That's
because we got people who pay something. It's like people who pay a liquor license, they can't open up. Well, we're working on trying to figure out, a way to get them, so they don't lose those months. I mean, they need to have that extended or get a rebate or get something.
Right. Now, when we open up, you said we're going to open up the retail. What about the restaurants? Because we've been having some here that gone out of business.
That's restaurants are tough, and we got a working group together working on restaurants, and we'll have something. We should have some announcement in a week about the date, so restaurants will be able to start coming back. I mean, again, with everything we're doing, we're trying to do the social distancing, and in a restaurant, that means that if it's a sit down restaurant, the tables are going to have to be spread out a little bit more probably, and certain things are going to have to be done, for people to actually feel safe in there. But we want to get the economy moving again, and it's coming. We're working on it.
What about schools? Let's talk schools. Everybody's worried, what is going to be the future of schools?
Yeah. Well, here's what I've asked the superintendents to do, and I know the State Department of Education has got working groups working on it, but it's trying to figure out, okay, you go back in August, let's say, how are you going to try to achieve some sort of social distancing? I was on the phone the other day with some superintendents, and some of them said, well, maybe what we could do, and we've not said this is going to be the way, but just to kind of tell you how the conversation went, a couple of them said, look, maybe we could get the distancing by, continuing to do some remote education, but the kids come to school maybe 2 days a week, and then another 2 days, another group of kids would come, and that way they would be spread out more. And when they're not in school, they would continue to do the distance learning. Now, I think the distance learning for some kids has worked out pretty well. But I think also, we do have people, who do not have the internet, do not have the ability for their kid to get up online, and that's a disadvantage, and that's a real. We're concerned. We find these kids sometimes in the city. We find these kids sometimes in rural areas where there's no service at all. Sometimes we find it with parents who don't have it. So these are the kids, Alicia, that you can go back to your experience in the legislature and on council. You worry particularly about those kids who don't have those advantages, and it's particularly worrisome now as kids are having to learn from a distance. And so what you worry about is kids get further and further behind.
Absolutely. And I had a lot of people concerned about that, because education is the way out for a lot of people. Maybe they were born into poverty, but because they could go to school and be educated, they can get out.
Yep.
So if they're limited to just their home environment, then they're stuck in that home environment. And like you said, food, being able to get food. A lot of kids go to school, we're able to get food as well. And then if their parents got to go back to work, homeschool is going to be a little bit tough to do.
It'll be different. Yeah, right.
What about the colleges? I got college students asking me about, what about college?
Well, the colleges, I was corresponding with the college president this morning. I asked her, I said, how are you going to do this in the fall? I mean, these schools have got to kind of figure it out. I think a lot of them for summer have gone to totally distance learning. But Alicia, more and more people are going online to get their education. I mean, it doesn't always work. If you're learning a trade, or if you're learning certain skill sets, it's hard to do online. But a lot of things can be done online, and So I think colleges are going to do more and more online anyway. I think that's a trend that we're seeing. But you know, I saw that Purdue over in Indiana, they said, "Hey, we're coming back. We're coming back in August." I think most of our colleges in Ohio have not yet, you know, made that decision. But you know, we haven't talked about this on this show, but one of the things we've seen is that younger people, by and large, you know, don't suffer as much on the virus. Now, there's exceptions, and we've got, you know, I've talked to people who've had kids in the hospital and intensive care. I've talked to 20-some-year-olds, people who knew 20-some-year-olds who were in the hospital. But by and large, the fatality rate generally is people over 50, over 60, who've got other, you know, other kind of medical problems. And so as you look to colleges coming back, I think that's probably going to be one of the considerations of parents and college students, you know, where they go back. The problem, you know, as you know, the problem with the college setting is, you know, if people are in a dorm, it's a close-in living together. You know, if they congregate in a coffee shop or a bar or wherever that is, you know, assuming the bars are open by then, you know, that's a pretty fast way to spread it. So these are tough decisions. And one of the things that I keep trying to emphasize to people is, yeah, we got to get back and working, but the virus is just as dangerous as it ever was. I mean, it didn't become benign. It didn't become, you know, not dangerous. It still is out there, and it spreads very, very, you know, very, very quickly, unfortunately.
Wow. Now, what about, we're talking to Governor DeWine. Let's talk about the prisons. I got a lot of folks who have family in the Pickaway Correctional Institution rather. I got a lot of folks in. What are we doing? We got a nurse, rest her soul, Tina Reeves, that passed away, and people are worried about their loved ones in the prison.
Yes. We had on our show today, Thursday, we had the director on. So I would invite anybody to go back, try to pull that up, and I'll answer your question. But the director was on, and she had described, you know, all the different things they've been doing. But the challenge, of course, is once the virus gets inside the door, and it's hard to keep out because you've got, you know, people who work there and they go in and out. They're going back to their communities, and some of them, you know, are don't have any symptoms, but are carrying the virus. I mean, Alicia, this is one of the things that we've found that's most dangerous about this virus is that people can have no symptoms, they can have no temperature, they can have no indication, but they're carrying it. And so once it enters the prison, because people, you know, about roughly, I think, half of our prisoners live in kind of open dorms. And so it spreads very, very quickly. Now, the higher security people, people in for more serious offenses, they're frankly more protected because they are in cells. I mean, anybody in a cell, you know, they're in one person to a cell or two people a cell, so it doesn't spread nearly as fast. But people who are living in kind of with bunks in a big room, you know, it spreads very, very quickly. So it's hard to control it inside the prison once it gets in. Now, what they're doing is every day they take the temperature of every inmate. They check on them. They see if they have any symptoms. But, you know, we did testing, for example, in Marion. And just to give you an example, the Marion prison, one dorm where you had over, let's say, one quad area where you had over 100 prisoners. Most of them tested positive. Of those who tested positive, 39% showed no symptoms, 0 symptoms. And so that tells you, I think it tells all of us that it's tough to control it because, you know, what we were doing is if you had a symptom, then we separate you out. If the guard has a symptom, we send them home. If their temperature, you know, is over where it should be, you know, you separate them. Or if it's a guard, you send them home. But the problem is so many people are carrying it, spreading it, and did not have any symptoms, and that's what makes it so particularly dangerous. But all the guards have the personal protective equipment that is appropriate for whatever they are doing. If they're medical and they're doing medical work, they've got the N95 mask. But if they're doing most of the other guards who are not doing the medical work, they're issued every day basically a surgeon mask, and so they're wearing a surgeon mask. The prisoners are supposed to wear a mask. Sometimes, unfortunately, the cameras will show that they got 4 or 5 prisoners coming together, and they're playing cards and they've taken their mask off, which is just very, very scary. So we try to get everybody to not do that and to keep the masks on.
So I've got 2 more questions for you, Governor. I'm gonna let you go. I know you've got to get going, but I wanted to ask you about local government. I know that the CARES Act is supposed to be giving money to the states, and I don't know how much we're going to get. Someone said in the billions, but we got people on the front line and the back line, and a lot of the local governments are having to cut back, and that affects basic services, police and fire, and all those on the front line and the back line. Wanted to get your thoughts on that, because they said you would have some discretionary leadway in terms of making sure these local governments, and certainly I'm gonna put a big shout out for my home city, Cincinnati, and my home county, Hamilton County, because we're certainly they're making different cuts. We want to make sure we have the basic folks on the front and the back line.
Well, no, Alicia, from your experience on the council and your experience in the legislature, how very important that is, and the great bulk of budgets are people who are on the front line, fire, police, and EMS. There is money coming down from the federal government. We're going to try to get that money out as quickly as we can to the local communities. There's also a chance that there's another bill in Congress, and one of the things that I'm certainly in favor of, and I think Senator Portman and Senator Brown both are, and the members of the Congress are, would provide more money for local governments, because it's not just the money they spend, as on the coronavirus to deal with that, but it's also, they're seeing a big downturn in their revenue. Income tax, sales tax for counties, and so when the economy goes down, you've seen that yourself. When the economy goes down, what happens? Social service demand goes up, so your costs go up if you're a government. At the same time, the amount of money coming in goes down. So I would like to see an additional bill from Congress that really gives local government money, but it gives them complete flexibility so that they can take that money and put it in police, fire, or wherever they need to put it in.
So I agree with you, and Governor DeWine, you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, but this COVID-19 doesn't matter who you are, it's affecting folks, and it's a time when we have to come together.
Yeah.
Come together. So I hope they don't be political.
No, absolutely. And look, people need to come together, and they've been able to get some bills through Congress to do that, which is great. The president signed and move on. I'd like to see him get this additional one that would give local more authority with the money, and let them decide. Let the city, let the county decide. Exactly how to spend that.
We're talking to Governor Mike DeWine, and we're covering a lot of topics. If you're just tuning in, you probably have to hear the rerun, because we talked about everything from education, K through 12, to college education. We talked about small businesses, all small businesses, but we also talked about beauty and barber, cosmetologists. We talked about all licenses, waiving the license fees. We talked about when will the restaurants be open. We talked about grants versus loans. We need grants out here. We talked about African-American health and how the disparity of COVID-19 and everything is hitting us. We got more with Governor DeWine when we come right back on Alicia Reece Soulfood.
the words that describe my father is from the bottom up, because nobody gave him anything. He's our GOAT, the greatest of all time.
Whenever I need somebody to tell me the truth, he's the person that I go to.
Figured out a long time ago, the greatest profession of all time is ownership.
I don't think your dad's afraid of anybody.
He was always there to support us.
Probably the closest thing I can think of to being self-made.
From the bottom up, the Dr. Stephen Reece Sr. story, produced and directed by Alicia Reece. Available on YouTube.
And we're back. Alicia Reece Soulfood. Thank you for those who are listening on 103.1 FM and 1050 AM. And all those who are checking in on Facebook Live. Tori Laurie, Marcia McCoy checking in from Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you. Chandra Monroe Williams, Iris Rowley. Thank you. Amber Twitty, OZ Davis. Thank you. Erica Whitney, Princess Hearns. Thank you for tuning in. All of those on Facebook Live, thank you for tuning in. Now, we tried to get as many questions as we could in, many that you had asked me before. I tried to ask him. And so we're going to go back to Governor DeWine.
Well, last question, Governor. Voting. We'll have an election in November. We had an election, and I know, I'll tell you, I was hurt that the election had gotten canceled, and I worked really hard trying to educate voters on, in a short amount of time about a new mail-in type of system. In November, do you think that that's where we're going to be, all mailing in? And if so, how do we start educating people on both sides? Because the turnout was low among all voters, no matter what party you were.
Right.
It was low because most people
It was.
participate like that.
Yeah, No, that's absolutely right. It was in fact low. Alicia, I think that we don't know yet. Ideally, you have the election like we normally do, which is basically 4 weeks of absentee balloting, some opportunities to go to the Board of Election and vote, and then on election day, in throughout the city and throughout the county, people be able for between 6:30 a.m. and 7:30 at night to be able to go vote in person. I mean, that's ideal. Where we're going to be with the coronavirus. I mean, you've heard some projections that it may not only continue like it is, but it may spike up then. I mean, I don't think we know yet exactly, how this is going to play out. But, it's something that we have to be concerned about. And if we have to have it all absentee, then I think we probably, need to take a look at the time frame and make sure we got the time frame and everything is covered. Let's hope we don't have to do that.
Yeah, I hope not. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show, Governor, and certainly invite you back whenever you have time. We want to make sure as many people as possible, are educated and informed. This is a tough time. I will say some good news. I want to let you know that we've had some partnerships in Hamilton County. Reverend Lynch, Pastor Damon Lynch III, you know him very well, and Iris Rowley, they partnered with Mercy Health.
Yes.
We have testing in Bond Hill, in the African American community. We have a testing site. Dr. Odell Owens with Interact for Health has been heavily involved in trying to educate people as well. But we like to see more testing.
Great. Yeah.
If African Americans are the ones hardest hit, we've got to make sure we get more access to testing in these communities with trust, so that people trust getting tested.
Yep. We're going to have more testing. We just signed a contract, so that testing is going to come on and be a lot more prevalent. So I think that's good news.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Governor DeWine, you stay safe, and we're praying for our entire state, all the families. And just know that when you open back up, this is my only 2 cents, anything I can do to help, I certainly want to help, because so many people now have to put the pieces back together. You can open their business, but they need to be connected with some resources. You could say we could go back to school, but resources have to be connected with education. And I want to be able to do whatever I can to help, because so many people So many families are just going to have to try to put the pieces together in a time when they want to stay safe, they want to stay healthy, but they want to also make sure that they can, pay the bills as well. So anything I can do to help, count me in. I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and help. This is a time when everybody has to come together because we will dictate what the future is going to be. So I just wanted to let you know you're not by yourself. We're all willing to roll up our sleeves and help and be a part.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Governor.
All right, Lee. Thank you very much. Good to be with you. Appreciate
Good
it.
to be with you.
All right, that was Governor Mike DeWine, and we're gonna take a quick break. Or no, we don't have time to take a break. That was Governor DeWine. We're almost out of time. But listen, I tried to ask all the questions that I could think of. I reached out to the governor and asked him to come on our show so that he could talk directly to our listeners. And they had questions, and he agreed to do it. And I just want to thank him for doing that. I tried to take all the questions that I could remember that people asked. I tried to offer some ideas and some things that we needed to put on the table. Afterwards, he did respond to me also, got back with me and liked some of our ideas. I told him we needed to move to having some type of grant that is available for small and for micro businesses, because there's 3 levels of small businesses. And a lot of small businesses, women and African Americans, are in that category of micro when it comes to how much money you actually bring in. So we need micro, where we can do anything from between like 10,000 to maybe 50 to 100,000 maximum, where people could go in and apply and get be able to get these grants. So you can be able to pay the rent when he opens back up. It opens back up, but it opens back up with some cost. When you open back up with some bills. So we're able to ask some of those questions. You can't run it all the way through the bank, because the banks want to deal with the bigger size businesses. And even when they say small, their small businesses are looking for people that have, over $10 million. That's still considered a small business. So if you're a micro business, there's not much for you. And you need a grant. Not even if it's 0 interest, you don't need a loan, you need a grant. You don't need an extra bill when you're getting back open. So I was glad to be able to put that on. I was glad to be able to talk about the license fees and those kind of things. So we're going to, like I do, we bring a little hot sauce. I want to thank Governor DeWine for coming on the show, giving us so much time. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you that voted in the primary. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for your prayers. And just remember, we are confidently faithful. And we're moving on to November. So if you want to be a part of this, we need your help. Call 513-861-6033. We got past round 1. We're moving on to the next round. November. Please call us, 861-6033. Thank you, everybody that prayed for us, voted for us, was with us. And even those that weren't with us, you can come on in. We were able to overcome so much, no endorsement. We had people coming at us from left and right. We had over $500,000 our opponents had. We had another opponent was just throwing all kind of sauce in the mix. But guess what? We stayed faithful. And so I'm humble today, humbly thankful, and I'm confidently faithful. Call us, 861-6033. We're moving forward. November, I need you. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you. And thank you, Governor DeWine. That's what I'm saying. We need people to have contacts that can call the governor. And let's try to get something done. You got to have some contacts. We're not going to always agree, but let's try to get something done. Alicia Reece Soulfood, have a great weekend. Peace. See you guys. Thank you.